The apple and the banana. Until this new century, two are the fruits that have divided humanity. The first, the apple of biblical origin, with which Lucifer or Satan deceived Eve and seduced her to disobey the Creator and taste the forbidden fruit in order to know the divine wisdom. With a golden apple placed on the ground by the goddess of discord in a gathering of all the gods, indicating that it should belong to the most beautiful of the three goddesses, Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite, Paris was turned to, who gave the apple to Aphrodite. This trial remained in force for a long time and is remembered as the Judgment of Paris. The fact is that the apple has been in history the fruit of the first great fruit dispute. The banana, on the other hand, is the fruit of the second great dispute. The reader must know, before beginning the reading, that the word banana is a word originating in America, that is, it is an Americanism used in several countries of this hemisphere to replace banana, which is the registered word by the Royal Spanish Academy. The expression banana republic has been formed over him, so carried and brought into the political language of our times. The banana makes its appearance in the civilization with a commercial company called United Fruit Company, emerged in Central America in 1899 and dissolved in 1970. The Central Americans of the countries where it operated called La Frutera, El Pulpo, or, said in a sarcastic and dialectal way, Mamita you now. Unlike the apple, reason for discord among gods, the banana was a cause of discord among men. I do not have space or time to describe in detail the operative techniques of this company, model of banana, which is why I will limit myself to a succinct synthesis. The much-discussed United Fruit Company was created by businessman Minor C. Keith, an American, married to the daughter of a certain Central American president. So much was his influence and power in the region, that the public called him the uncrowded king of Central America, the uncrowned king of Central America. Among his exploits, history lists the following: he bribed local leaders, bought in the country's lands neighboring their establishments and kept them uncultivated under the pretext of droughts and hurricanes, to avoid the establishment of competing companies and the lowering of prices by overproduction. He bribed the rulers to pay low taxes, without counting the bloody struggle against the rebellious peasants. His industrial and commercial activity specialized in bananas, and marginally, in pineapples. When the United Fruit Company closed, Mr. Keith founded a new company that lasts to this day and that the public can recognize in the bananas identified with a stamp affixed to the shell with the mark. The bibliography on the above-mentioned company registers hundreds of articles and volumes that the curious reader can find if it is proposed, some in favor, others against the company. I do not intend to make recommendations on whether or not to buy bananas with that stamp stuck on their cover, because I have no background to present myself as a commercial, economic, and political advisor. Despite this lack, I dare to reason that in the controversy between the apple and the banana, the ancients were in a better situation, because the problem was a dispute between the gods, whereas in the controversy over the banana discord occurs between us humans. Mr. Keith lived in this world from 1948 to 1929, but his banana tree has survived to this day. An unconfirmed rumor in his time, he maintained that in his private life he did not eat bananas because he preferred apples. I thus clarify the issue of the banana republics, although with a crucial question: should an opponent of this political system eat bananas or not? CCC 97. Kill a plant. If someone cuts or plucks the root of a plant before it surfaces, there is no doubt that it has killed the future plant. We will not say that the author of this act is a plant killer, because the plants cannot be killed. But what happens if what is cut or torn is a human fetus? Anything whose growth or development is interrupted is called in Spanish an abortion, abortus, before birth, of the nativity, of the beginning. That is why it is said in Spanish that a revolution, for example, has aborted when it has not been produced. When a person executes this action on a human fetus, he actually commits an aborticidium, aborticide, that is, he has killed an abortion by taking away the opportunity to be born. Interestingly, the Latin language is more accurate than the Spanish language in this case. In Latin, one thing is an abortion, something born before time, and another one is an aborticide, that is, to kill that abortion. If someone removes the fetus from the womb, it has generated an abortion, but if it also kills that abortion, it has committed an aborticide. The doctors of medicine are divided into abortionists and anti-abortionists. The abortionists argue that intentionally causing abortion is permissible until 14 days after fertilization, because until then the nervous system in the embryo is not developed. This argument is like saying that if someone starts a rheosida of less than 14 days, has not killed the plant because until then it is only a rheosida and not a developed plant. Or to say that if a bird egg is crushed, not a dove has been killed but a dove's egg. Of course, an egg has been destroyed, but has the dove that came inside been killed or not? Consequently, anyone who says that an embryo is not a person is asserting something contrary to biology. If it kills the root, does it kill the plant? Does killing an embryo not kill a person? AKA 98. The shield against Nietzsche. It is now the turn of the 19th century German philosopher Federico Nietzsche. If you ask me for a summary of your life and work, I would write it as follows. German philosopher, 1844 to 1900, profusely read in his time for his racist ideas, his personal enmity with God and the creation of a Superman on earth that ends once and for all with the weak, the timorous, and the sick. He hesitates if he was crazy from birth, but at least it shows that he died being so. If one were to write a story of the most harmful philosophers of the West, his name would be among the top 10. He matched his ideas with a tormented, exalted and sick life, perhaps as a result of an illness not confessed, not hereditary, and that out of respect for his memory I refuse to specify. By 1889 he fell into a stroke that left him mute and almost deprived of any action other than writing a few pages, and the diagnosis of the doctors who treated him identified as softening of the brain. When he died he left written a volume, The Antichrist, Curse to Christianity, that his sister Elizabeth, married to a notorious anti-Semite, fake suppressing paragraphs and adulterating its contents, to the point that the Nazi regime of Hitler took advantage of it for their benefit. He was the son and grandson of Protestant pastors and attacked Christianity with an inexplicable pertinacity that goes beyond a question of beliefs. In successive stages of his existence he studied classical philology, theology, positive sciences, and how much discipline was crossed in front of him, from which he extracted disorderly substance for his works. His books reiterate many of the central ideas, considered by Western critics as basic to a new philosophy of investment of values. The University of Basel appointed him an extraordinary professor. The one from Leipzig granted him the degree of doctor without the need for an examination. He renounced German citizenship to become Swiss. He fell in love but his passion was not shared. He lived harassed by the disease. He traveled continuously from one city to another in search of health and had to retire voluntarily due to his inability to teach. His name is inevitable in any history of philosophy, even in the most abbreviated, and his sentence "God is dead" could be recorded as his currency if a coat of arms were designed. For modern psychiatry, Nietzsche would be a typical example of the mental disturbance called paranoia, in that his abundant books revolve around an obsessive and recurrent idea, God, and its implications included. His main works were La Gaia Scientia, 1881–1882, Assi Oblara Zarathustra, 1883, and Beyond Good and Evil, 1886, in which his mind disperses fragmentarily into thoughts at times lucid and at times trivial and fatiguing. In them there appear fleeting intellectual flashes, not yet organized in a coherent system, through which the reader can take knowledge of his ideas of the opposition between an Apollonian world, rationalist, willful, of power, and a Dionysian world, disorganized, emotional, of the weakness of Greek thought in promulgating concepts about the beautiful, the true, the good, the moral, which have ended up weakening with metaphysics and mythological religions. The Nietzschean ideology has subjugated over the years young rebels and atheist adults, who have attached themselves to the books of the philosopher as a lifeline to justify their anti-clerical struggle. To deny God with the support of such a well-known philosopher was to grant atheism a cultural shield of illustration and distinction. For example, an individual who proclaimed Nietzsche's philosophical admirer would have the doors open to affirm, I am on the sidelines of everyone and I do not accept anyone's conditions. I want people to submit to my fantasies as well and find it perfectly natural for me to give myself up to such and such outings. Logia Science, 23. This is enough. I also do not accept Nietzsche's conditions and I do not submit to his fantasies. CCA 99. Where does the white finish and the black begins? If someone were to show a person a strip of paper whose end was white and in progressive gradation was blackening until it culminated in black, no one could point to a vertical line that precisely separated the exact place where the white begins to be black. This same uncertainty arises in other fields of human action that imply a progressive gradation. At what point does love begin to be hate? At what point does attenuated truth become a lie? At what point does a beautiful figure begin to be ugly? There are those who affirm that from the beginning to the end the white is mixed with the black and everything depends on the relative proportion of both colors, that is to say, that only at the beginning everything is white and only at the end the black is black. But in that assumption, only the first and last points are pure black and white, and all the other grays. But the human being neither gains nor loses much by not knowing the limits between the colors, and can ignore the problem by leaving it to the philosophers, who also do not have it resolved and cannot tell him when the red arterial blood becomes venous or bluish. They count the red blood cells and the white blood cells under the microscope and according to a conventional number that science has established, they tell you if they are anemic or not. You can believe them without greater risk, because with that approximate figure it is enough to prescribe a transfusion. Similar reasoning can be made about the beautiful and the ugly, but I prefer to transfer it to you to solve it on your own, although I am sure you will not succeed. Could you tell me when a poetry or a song goes from being beautiful to being ugly? I will confine myself solely to the sentimental field with the following analysis. At a certain moment you realize that the person you loved very much no longer loves her as before and happens to hate her. This usually happens with a neighbor, with a friend and even with a relative or relative. But do not worry, my friend, because even the wise do not know. The line of cut or the number of particles is an impossible knowledge for the human being. What do I do then, you will ask yourself anguished. Although I am not able to give myself wise, I could nevertheless tell you how I handle myself in these cases of doubt, but please do not take it as an advice but as the narration of an individual case. I stick to common sense, that is, what a large part of humanity does, stick firmly to what my conscience dictates and that is, repudiate the idea of all evil and get away as much as possible. A cat. 100. Mathematics does not lie. The living bodies, vegetables, animals, and men, resemble the organisms of their parents in the general characteristics of the species, and sometimes also in some individuals. The descendant of a chimpanzee monkey will inevitably also be a chimpanzee monkey, general character, and in some cases perhaps also prefer as his father the coconuts and not bananas, individual character. A poodle dog will surely be another poodle, but may or may not like the sugar water as his father liked it. There is no known in history a poodle that has fathered a bulldog, nor a man who has sired a chimpanzee. With this there is already enough reason to live quietly and not wait terrified in the hospital before the possibility that your pregnant woman begets a little monkey. A child may be born with some deficiency or deformity, but it will be a human deformity and not a simian malformation. No gynecologist has ever seen such a case. I say even more, the monkeys themselves would have to remain calm, since none of them will beget a human being. Panfilo, a lover of everything, reasoned with another curious fellow also of all curiosity, about this matter of inheritance. Neither of the two thinkers knew the fact that the characters acquired by inheritance are the physical and the psychic, and in no way the knowledge acquired by the parents. My dad was a seasoned mathematician and my mother was a distinguished English teacher, but I do not know a bit about either of the two subjects, said Panfilo. His comrade of ignorance confirmed it in the doubt, The same thing happens to me, he said. My father and my mother were excellent swimmers, and if I get in the water I drown in 2 minutes. They decided to consult with a psychologist the explanation of this hereditary injustice, and they found the answer that what is inherited are the real qualities of the parents or ancestors, never the thoughts and knowledge that are ideal objects, that is, they are in the mind of those who think them and are not a part of it. They are like food, they are not inherited because they are inside the stomach and are not part of the stomach. The inheritance has its limits which it cannot pass. If your father has eaten an orange, you do not inherit the ingested food, explained the psychologist succinctly. Oh. The two friends left the clinic unhappy and met casually in the street with a third friend who bought flowers in a corner and told him about the event. The unexpected interlocutor smiled benevolently and took them out of doubt. It's okay to be like this. Fate cannot give us everything. My fifth-grade teacher, who was not a psychologist, psychiatrist, or philosopher, told me once in class, those who want to fish have to wet their pants. That's it, it's that simple. My conclusion is that there will always be more dry pants than wet ones.